Last week, the European Commission tabled a proposal.
안녕하세요. 매일매일 운동하기를 실천하고 있는 동탄 왕코입니다. 오늘은 5월, 오늘이 5월 24일? 오늘 화요일이에요. 네. 오늘은 제가 피를 뽑았습니다, 여러분. 제가 아파요. 고지혈증이 있습니다, 여러분. 그래서 정기적으로 피를 뽑아서 그 피의 콜레스테롤 수치를 확인을 하고 있어요. 네, 그렇습니다. 그래서 오늘 피를 뽑아가지고 팔굽혀펴기는 못할 것 같아요. 예전에 피 뽑고 나서 그 아령 들고 팔굽혀펴기 했더니 여기 멍이 이렇게 드는 거야. 그래서 오늘은 스트레칭이랑 스쿼트 조금만 할게요. 요즘에 날씨가 많이 더워졌습니다, 여러분. 날씨도 너무 좋고 덥고 그래요. 그래서 지금 선풍기를 틀어놨는데 그래서 더울 것 같습니다. 일단은 땀을 싹 빼고 스트레칭하고 스쿼트하고 하도록 하겠습니다. 이시 운동할 땐 쉬어내죠.
Annual energy consumption of more than 50 million homes. This is roughly 1/4 of all European households. This is the right way to go. Renewable energy is basically our springboard towards net zero CO2 emissions. And it is good for the climate, but it is also good for our independence and for our security of energy supply. The same is true for the diversification of our gas supply. This is another pillar of Repower EU. As we speak, Europe is concluding new arrangements with reliable, trustworthy suppliers all over the world. In March, I agreed with President Biden to significantly step up LNG deliveries from the United States to the European Union. The amount will replace around about 1/3 of the Russian gas we have today. More LNG pipeline gas will also come from the Middle East and North Africa. New LNG terminals in Greece, in Cyprus, and in Poland will soon become operational, as will new interconnectors. And important is that the connecting pipeline infrastructure will then, over time, form the core of our hydrogen corridors. Hydrogen, ladies and gentlemen, is the new frontier of Europe's energy network. But we must also think further ahead. The economies of the future will no longer rely on oil and coal, but on lithium for batteries, on silicon metal for chips, on rare earth permanent magnets for electric vehicles and wind turbines. And it's sure, the green and digital transition will massively increase our need for these materials. However, if we look at where we are today, access to these materials is not at all a given. For many of them, we rely on a handful of producers all over the world. So we must avoid falling into the same trap as with oil and gas.
영양제가
We
얘가
should
왜
not
이렇게
replace
뭐야? 갑자기
all
얘는 왜 이렇게 빨리
dependencies
먹었지 영양제를?
with new ones.
얘도 엄청 먹었네.
We are therefore working to ensure the resilience of our supply chains. And again, strong international partnerships are at the heart of the solution. So the Commission has already secured strategic raw material partnerships with countries, for example, like Canada, and additional reliable partnerships will follow. Once again, together we can create more balanced interdependencies and build supply chains that we can really trust. Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing how Russia is weaponizing its energy supplies. And indeed, this is having global repercussions. Unfortunately, we're seeing the same pattern emerging in food security. Ukraine is one of the world's most fertile countries, and even its flag symbolizes the most common Ukrainian landscape, a yellow field of grain under blue, blue sky. Now, those fields of grain have been scorched. In Russian-occupied Ukraine, the Kremlin's army is confiscating grain stocks and machinery. For some, this brought back memories from a dark past, the times of the Soviets, crop seizures, and the devastating famine of the 1930s. Today, Russia's artillery is bombarding grain warehouses in Ukraine, deliberately. And Russian warships in the Black Sea are blockading Ukrainian ships full of wheat and sunflower seeds. The consequences of these shameful acts are there for everyone to see. Global wheat prices are skyrocketing, and it's the fragile countries and vulnerable populations that suffer the most. Bread prices in Lebanon have increased by 70%, and food shipments from Odessa could not reach Somalia. And on top of this, Russia is now hoarding its own food exports as a form of blackmail, holding back supplies to increase global prices or trading wheat in exchange for political support. This is using hunger and grain to wield power. And again, our answer is and must be to mobilize greater collaboration and support at the European and global level. First, Europe is working hard to get grain to global markets out of Ukraine. You must know that there are currently 20 million tons of wheat stuck in Ukraine. The usual export in Ukraine was 5 million tons per month. Now it is down to 200,000 to 1 million tons. By getting it out, we can provide Ukrainians with the needed revenues and the World Food Programme with supplies it so badly needs. So to do this, we are opening solidarity lines. We are linking Ukraine's borders to our ports. We're financing different modes of transportation so that Ukraine's grain can reach the most vulnerable countries in the world. Second, we're stepping up our own production to ease pressure on global food markets. And we're working with the World Food Programme so that available stocks and additional countries are able to reach the products, who have the products at affordable prices. Global cooperation is the antidote against Russia's blackmail. Third, we're supporting Africa in becoming less dependent on food imports. Only 50 years ago, Africa produced all the food it needed. For centuries, countries like Egypt were the granaries of the world. Then climate change made water scarce, and the desert swallowed hundreds of kilometers of fertile land year after year. Today, Africa is heavily dependent on food imports, and this makes it vulnerable. Therefore, an initiative to boost Africa's own production capacity will be critical to strengthen the continent's resilience. The challenge is to adapt farming to a warmer and drier age. So innovative technologies will be crucial to leapfrog companies around the world are already testing high-tech solutions for climate-smart agriculture. For example, precision irrigation, operating on power from renewable, or vertical farming, or nanotechnologies, which can cut the use of fossil fuels to produce fertilizers. Ladies and gentlemen, the signs of a growing food crisis are obvious. We have to act urgently. But there are also solutions today and on the horizon. And this is why, again, cooperation. I am working with President al-Sisi to address the repercussions of the war with an event on food security and the solutions coming from Europe and the region. It is time to end the unhealthy dependencies. It is time to create new connections. It is time to replace the old chains with new bonds. So let's overcome these huge challenges in cooperation, and that is in Davos spirit. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your attention.
You have been listening there to European President Ursula von der Leyen addressing business as well as the political elite in Davos, Switzerland. Let me give you a sense of what she said in the last 20 minutes or so. Really, the standout comments from me was, Ukraine must win this war, she said. Putin's aggression must be a strategic failure. Speaking to WEF, she said the WEF must address the costs as well as consequences of Putin's war of choice. She went on to say this is putting the whole international order into question, and that is why really countering Russia's aggression is a task for the entire global community. She then said we will help Ukraine rise from the ashes, and that's why the idea behind a reconstruction platform that she has proposed to President Zelensky. And she added this, we should leave no stone unturned, including, she said, this is what I found fascinating, possibly using Russian assets to help with the reconstruction and the financial support for Ukraine. She then touched on oil, on sanctions, but also on the question of food security. We know, of course, that Ukraine is a breadbasket for Europe. We have seen much of the grains and the wheats really being stopped at Russian ports, at Ukrainian ports, stopped by Russia. She said about 20 million tons of wheat have stuck in Ukraine. The repercussions of that, of course, for the poorest countries around the world. She said that, like the same way that Russia is weaponizing energy, they are also doing the same on food security. So weaponizing food security is what Ursula von der Leyen said in the last 10 minutes or so. Because of this, she said, she's working with the rest of Europe, trying to find ways to try and get those grains out with different transportation, but also, she said, they're looking to increase their own production within Europe and working with the World Food Programme for that. She also said that really the important part here is trying to make sure that they really get the food, the grains out of the country. Remember, today, in the last about hour or so and a half, I showed you we had satellite images of really the grain being stolen from Russia, from Ukraine, and that is the concern, that Russia is weaponizing and blackmailing, she said, blackmailing the world, using hunger, I'm quoting her here, using hunger and grain to wield power. She also added that this, though, is not just about using, undermining Putin's fury. It's also about reform and investment for Ukraine. That's why she said they've created a reconstruction platform that will help, of course, finance in many ways possible Ukraine. She said, we will do everything we can for Ukraine, to support Ukraine in terms of direct investment and direct support. She said that includes pensions, that includes salaries. She talked about 10 billion euro financial assistance package, kind of an economic relief operation to help Ukraine rise from the ashes, of course, a very strong statement and strong words from Ursula von der Leyen, really saying Ukraine must win this war and Putin's aggression must be a strategic failure. And we expect as well to hear from the NATO Secretary General, who's expected to address the World Economic Forum. You're looking at those live images there. He's expected to speak later this hour. Of course, we'll bring that to you when it gets underway. For now, though, I want to send it back to Early Start.
What do you see when you look at the surface? Just that, the surface. But dive deeper and new possibilities emerge. Essential intelligence from S&P Global takes you here, providing the data, risk assessment, and workflow solutions you need to plumb the wonders beneath. A better, more prosperous future awaits. It's yours for the seeking. S&P Global. Seek and prosper.
Smart, and we try very hard to get both of those every week. But I want to hear our authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent about a subject, who will make you smarter, move you emotionally, who will kind of challenge your mind or move your heart, and that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria, GPS, Sundays on CNN.
Questions about what is the federal government doing. Do you get the anger that is out here? How concerned are you about the front line? You don't believe that there's a racial divide here. Looking back, as president, did you tell the story of race in America enough, do you think?
All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're part of what I do right here, holding the powerful accountable, keeping them honest.
AC 360, Tuesday through Saturday only on CNN.
Welcome back. The Biden administration is considering a plan to send special operations forces into Ukraine to help guard the newly opened U.S. embassy in Kyiv. According to several U.S. officials, the idea is in very preliminary stages at this point and has not been presented to the president yet. Right now, the embassy and its limited number of personnel are protected by State Department security officers. Meanwhile, President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine is ready for a prisoner exchange with Russia, and he's calling on all of his country's allies to pressure Putin to agree to one. Let's go live to Lviv, Ukraine, and bring in CNN's Suzanne Malveaux. Suzanne, good morning.
Good morning, Laura. Well, President Zelensky is saying that they are ready for this prisoner swap, this exchange as early as even tomorrow, really underscoring the sense of urgency here in his message to those world leaders at Davos through a video call. He is saying that this is not simply a humanitarian act, but a very political act here that requires the cooperation of many of these other countries and world leaders. He says under no circumstance should Russia receive any kind of concessions, and that the economic pressure is the most important thing to keep up with the oil embargo, the sanctions, the closing of businesses, that type of thing. And he also suggested too, Laura, that Russia really doesn't value its people all that much. When you talk about this prisoner exchange, he notes that Ukrainian forces have literally, he said in his words, filled tens of thousands of body bags with the corpses of Russian soldiers who've been left behind. So really trying to set the scene, if you will, for expectations of these negotiations with the Russians. On the Russian side, a Russian state media reporting that the deputy foreign minister has said, yes, Russia is still open to a prisoner swap, but we also heard from the leader of the Russian-controlled territory of Donetsk, who says they are preparing documents right now for potential tribunals of those who have been held captive and surrendered inside of Mariupol from that steel plant. And Laura, finally, I have been in touch with the wife of one of those who is in captivity by the Russians. She last heard from her husband. This was 5 days ago when he surrendered and turned himself in. She has heard no word in terms of how he is doing, his whereabouts. She is trying to be hopeful, but she fears the worst, Laura.
All right, Suzanne Malvo, thank you for your
아이고
reporting.
여기까지 하겠습니다.
All right, veterans of America's elite special forces are taking hard-earned lessons from their time in Iraq and Afghanistan to